The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
CJ, the biggest story going around right now is that of Quinn Hughes. Reports have surfaced that the Vancouver Canucks and the New Jersey Devils have at least talked about it, the possibility of maybe adding one of the best defensemen in the game. It got to a point where Quinn Hughes had to address the report himself after a game over the weekend, and he even referred to the Devils GM, Tom Fitzgerald, as Fitzy. A lot of people in Vancouver are very uneasy about this story, CJ. What light can you shed on this?
Well, to be fair, they've been uneasy about it since the summer, pretty much. I mean, this was a discussion point, even really at the end of last season, you know, the end of season press conference with Jim Rutherford, where he kind of brought this up. So I think it's definitely simmering. You know, I want to tread lightly here because I really have no reason to believe there's a trade that's imminent or anything like that's going to happen. And I don't want to give off that impression. But clearly we are getting to a point in time where, you know, it's clear which way the Canucks are going this season. You know, their main focus as an organization for this season was to be competitive, right? To put the best foot forward, to have Quinn Hughes be of a mind to want to, stay there a long time. And let's face it. I mean, I know people have been sort of studying his body language and, you know, finding clips and stuff like that. You know, he's a frustrated guy right now. And I don't think he's alone, just because it's a second straight season where, you know, it's not gone well for Vancouver. And so, you know, it doesn't surprise me that there may be a conversation, but it's probably going to take many conversations between player and agent, player and teams to get to this point. But I mean, look, this notion of, you know, where he might play next. I mean, Quinn Hughes is coming up on unrestricted free agency in a couple of years' time. And so he, you know, by virtue of that, he gets to choose where he plays next. And there seems to be a pretty strong undercurrent that, you know, playing with his brothers is something that holds a lot of appeal. So, you know, I guess my ultimate feeling here is we might get there. I don't know if we're there yet, but it just feels like it's such a story. Like I don't want to wrestle around too much because I don't want to send off too many, you know, fireworks that maybe aren't warranted at this stage of things.
Very fair. Can you at least shed some light as to why Quinn Hughes might be so familiar with an opposing GM that he would call him Fitzy? Because if I'm a fan of the Canucks, I would fixate on that for an entire weekend. I get hockey nicknames are what they are. You shorten them the way that you do, but that's not his GM.
Yeah, but it's his GM for Team USA things, right? Tom Fitzgerald's part of the management group with USA Hockey. So, I mean, start there. Hockey's a small town. You know, it's a really small town. Tom Fitzgerald even, you know, Quinn Hughes was basically raised in the Toronto area. His dad, Jim, worked for the Leafs for many years. Tom Fitzgerald played for the Leafs. Like, I don't know the exact origin story of when they first would have met, but it won't surprise me if they've known each other a long time. So I understand the sort of spirit of that question, but it doesn't send me to reach massive conclusions. You know, you're right. It speaks to a level of familiarity though. But everyone kind of knows everyone. Like, I hate to, you know, you don't think Bill Guerin's talking to Austin Matthews right now, right? At times, as the USA Hockey GM, you know, John Cooper, the Team Canada coach, very friendly guy. You don't think when he's going around the league, like, he knows players, probably players who call him Coop if you interviewed them, right? It doesn't mean that they're going to the doesn't mean they're going to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like, I do think so. It just, what it speaks to me is this really is the world's smallest town, professional hockey. Everybody feels like they're like half a degree removed from each other. And if you hang around for long enough, you get to know a lot of people.
I can imagine. I know we don't want to go too much down the road of Quinn Hughes.
You're trying to push me there.
I'm trying to push you there, but I'm also trying to not get you too over the deep end with it. But I am curious, like, for the last couple of weeks, I've had friends and colleagues debate the merits of, you know, what the potential asking price could be for a player like Quinn Hughes, whose contract will expire in 2027, and pondering, like, hey, is it worth having that contract on the books, knowing he might just bolt and say, you know what, I want to sign with New Jersey, just as an example, as an unrestricted free agent. Like, that has been a conversation topic these last couple of weeks.
Right, but there's advantage here for Quinn Hughes if he's going to move on. Is we're having CBA rules being phased in now, and as of next September, this coming September 2026, that's the end of when players can sign 8-year contracts with a team. So, just putting it out there, if this is going to happen, whether it's New Jersey or anywhere else, even if Quinn Hughes is signing in Vancouver as an extension, like I think it's fair to say that this summer is going to be when he wants to get his next contract done because he can sign for an extra year. And it's not just the extra year. There's all these rules now about how much % of signing bonus players can receive. Basically the league is leveling things off a little bit more. And so I think it's beneficial for Quinn Hughes and any other player that is a 2027 UFA to extend early because you can sign a more favorable contract. For example, the deal that Ryan McDonough just signed in Tampa, the 4-year extension he did at the end of last week, the way that's structured with signing bonuses wouldn't be allowed a year from now. So it's just an example that signing earlier, is probably beneficial to players. So I do think this will likely come to a head somewhere before now and next September. But there's still a lot of road to be traveled potentially between then and now. I don't think the fact that conversations loosely might be happening. I mean, I think that's just a realistic state of where things are at. And Jim Rutherford has been pretty open about this, like about the fact that this could be, where it's headed. Like, I think the Canucks are realistic here. I don't think you make a trade like this if you ever get to the point where you're trading him. It's not one phone call, right? Like this isn't a player for a 4th round pick and, what time's his flight going to be? This will probably be a little more of a complex trade. I think there's a lot of thinking that would have to go through it. There's probably internal approvals that have to happen. There might be a contract extension. Like, when we get to a point where this could happen, I just don't think we're there yet. I do expect it's going to take a lot of massaging on all sides. So, the conversation does tell us, so look, this season in Vancouver is just slowly sliding away and they've got some big and hard decisions ahead of them.
Anything else you're hearing about some of the other players who could be available? We've mentioned Kiefer Sherwood a bunch on this show.
Yeah, it seems like it got a little quiet on him. I mean, to be honest, it feels a little quiet around the league right now. And just when it comes to sort of like trade or player movement, what I'm very curious about is there was a change made, one of those CBA changes that was made, Julian, when it comes to players having their salary retained twice in trades. Effectively, you can still retain salary on a player, but he has to stay with that next team for 75 days before salary can be retained again. And I bring this up only because we're getting close to that 75-day window before the trade deadline. And it happens to just time pretty nicely with the holiday roster freeze. And so there could be, because this is a new wrinkle in the CBA, there could be some incentive there for teams to trade for a player, before the roster freeze kicks in on December 19th. With the idea that they could be flipping him again before the March 6th trade deadline, after that 75-day window expires. So, because it's new, I'm not saying 100% this is going to happen. There's definitely been a little bit, I'd say, buzz around about that. Like, it's something I've encountered in some conversations I've had, with people that work in team management. And it's, who knows, maybe we'll get almost like an early little trade deadline, as a result of this change to the CBA. I think at this point, we'd all embrace it because, as we've sort of bemoaned at times, the trading has gone the way of the dodo bird in the NHL, it seems, these days. So if that's the case, obviously we're only a week and a little bit out from that window of time. So, maybe things will pick up a little bit this week. I'm actually in Colorado Springs right now. The NHL Board of Governors are meeting here. That's a meeting typically where you're talking about team owners, team presidents. But there are some general managers here. I actually saw Steve Stamkos last night from your Ottawa Senators. So, maybe I'm just saying maybe there'll be some GMs here. Maybe there'll be some talk that happens, that gets trade movements going. I mean, sometimes face to face is a way to get things done. So, I'm not trying to say nothing's going to happen, but I don't get the feeling there's all that much. It seems like there's more fireworks on Twitter with some things people are reporting than there actually is things happening, if that makes sense.
That was where I wanted to go next. Like, I mean, there's been a lot, and I'm just trying to figure out, like, what's what's going on? Like Phil Deneau could be on the market. Like with some of the Tristan Jarry also came up in reports as well. What's legit here?
Well, it's legit that the Oilers have some interest in Tristan Jarry, and there definitely have been conversations there with Pittsburgh. I don't think a trade is all worked out. It's happening right now, or else that's what we'd be talking about, right? I think that's something that I guess is in the air because, it could maybe come together if Edmonton decides to make that goalie move that, a lot of people have been clamoring for. Now, the Oilers have actually started playing better of late. I don't know if this is the time to be disrupting that. But again, it's something that could happen. Pittsburgh, as we've mentioned on the show, has a number of goaltenders in their system. I don't think they're by any means they're shopping anyone, or they don't feel they have to move a goalie, but I think they're open to those conversations. And obviously there's been at least a conversation there about that with Edmonton. I do know Jarry does hold some appeal to them. He's signed. He's from the Edmonton area. He's having a really nice bounce back season after, passing through waivers and, spending time in the American Hockey League. I guess there's a degree of real to that, but it's not a trade that's happened. I mean, it's definitely fair to tie those teams to interest. Deneau is not having a particularly good year. And, I suppose we could get to that point, but I don't get the sense anything's too imminent with him. I mean, there was a report about Pete DeBoer being in advanced talks to take over the Kings bench. That's been flatly denied. I mean, maybe people are getting a little restless, and obviously, we are getting to a point. We're also getting to a point where, it is definitely not early anymore. Remember, we were always gauging, is it still early? I mean, teams are going to have to make some decisions, whether it comes to players or potentially, personnel changes. Like the reality on that keeps getting turned up with each passing week because, there's a lot of expectations in these markets. That being said, GMs are doing the same thing we're doing. We're going to the standings every day and they're like what? How do you make any sense of this? Like 70% of the league is just in like one giant cluster with almost the same record. It's very bizarre. So, it's harder to make calls based on that, I think. Maybe a little different. Again, Vancouver's different. Nashville could be different. Calgary, like the teams at the very bottom, I think have a pretty good sense that that's probably where they're going to be, to some degree here down the stretch. But there's a couple teams at the top, but then everyone's clustered in the middle. So, maybe that's the reason not much has happened, right? We haven't seen a coach fired this year, this season yet. It's getting, usually it would have happened by now. We haven't really seen a trade of any consequence yet. The most exciting kind of, if you're into this stuff, is like a couple players terminated contracts and signed somewhere else. That's been our big headline so far in 25-26 off ice. Not including, I think the games have actually been pretty good, and there's a lot of compelling things happening with players, in the league, but off ice, it's been rather quiet.
So what are your thoughts on, particularly in the Eastern Conference, where we both cover teams in the Ontario region, what have been your thoughts on how compressed it's been in that conference? Like, hearing from guys like Brady Tkachuk, who specifically said this on his podcast, like every win feels like, oh, you're on the top, and then every loss feels like the end of the world, because you could easily have a good week and be near the top of your division, and then you could lose a couple games and you could be a couple points from the bottom. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen a season like this. No,
certainly it would be hard. Like, I don't know what we've used to measure, but I'm basically going to say it's never really happened. And on top of everything, there's a lot of overtime games, right? So there's a lot of loser points floating out around the league too, which sort of muddies things and keeps teams, it kind of prevents a lot of separation between teams, which is what it's designed to do. I actually asked John Tavares about this over the weekend, and he was saying he thinks a lot of it comes from the fact that there's been some established kind of great teams. He didn't name them, but I think he's pointing at like a Florida, these other teams, and he just feels like it's a bit of a turnover in the league. And because you have other teams shooting up, like it kind of, it was almost like an established pecking order, and now it's kind of being, turned upside down a little bit, and it leaves, it's hard to know what's what. And I don't know that it's going to stay this way. I mean, maybe we're just moving towards a world where the Chicagos and Anaheims and some of these emergent teams emerge, right? And they're just at the top, and then some other teams are kind of in rebuilds or doing those things. It might just be, part of a cycle. But it's a weird year. But if you're standings watching, like I almost avoid standings watching because I feel like there's not too much to be gleaned by it for the reasons you mentioned, that like a team shoots up and then they're down. I mean, you're obviously trying to be aware of who's hot and who's not in the league, but it just doesn't feel like holding a playoff spot right now, especially in the East, means too much because of the number of teams 1 or 2 points behind you that if you do lose those games, or maybe you get a rare light week. I know there's not very many light weeks out there at the compressed schedule for the Olympics, but you don't play many games, you're going to get past. So, I think water will find its level eventually, but it might take them pretty close to the trade deadline before we feel good about that because nothing's going to happen in February. I mean, something's going to happen, presumably an Olympic hockey tournament, but no NHL games are going to happen from I think February 6th to 22nd. So.
Yeah, my head is still just spinning after our last episode with how we spoke about the progress on the construction of that rink in Italy, and just still very impactful. Have you seen any of the reactions from players since? I know Nathan MacKinnon was one of those players who spoke on that. One particular quote that went around, basically a short one, "It'll change things, but who cares?" This is really funny to hear him talk about a rink going from 200 feet to a little under 197 feet.
Yeah, I mean, that's Nathan. That kind of sums up Nathan as well as the rink, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And
let's face it, so many players have wanted and clamored so long to play at the Olympics. I think this isn't going to be something that bothers them. I think that they'll push through whatever it is. Now, what was interesting in the story you're referencing, a number of NHL players, active players, said that they do think it'll make a difference and that guys will notice that are playing on it, that when you operate, and we're talking about the best players in the world, like they'll be kind of like spatially aware of that difference. But, I do think ultimately the bigger issue is, do they get the rinks done? Is the ice quality at the right level? I think that's always a concern when you're not going to get a chance to play a lot of games on that ice before the Olympics begin. So that's probably truly, it could be a disaster if they get over there and players are getting injured because of the ice or something, right? Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's, I think, the biggest fear. The rink thing was it was just like, it just kind of summed up everything that's going on with this tournament. But as Nathan MacKinnon said, it'll be different, but who cares?
Like, here's the thing. Like, hockey people like us, we will obviously notice whatever change that they do. Maybe, as Mike Sullivan said, like he's hoping it might end up being the neutral zone that gets shortened out of it. But for a lot of people who are going to be watching this tournament, it's not going to be that big of a deal. It's just, we needed something to talk about a little bit. I do think it is partially part of that.
It is real. Yes. And Hockey Canada, for example, was aware of it and is preparing the players to be it's a small adjustment. I mean, and I do think, by the way, that it will be in the neutral zone. I was told that where you'll basically see that space lopped off, which means when you're skating through the neutral zone, the blue line comes at you quicker, right? Like that. Anyway, we don't need to bemoan these 196.85 foot players, but yeah, a lot of guys did say, Nico Sturm had a strong quote in there. He's like, I don't get it. He's like, either use international or NHL ice, but we got neither here. I mean, you got to make do with what you got sometimes, right? They're going to a country where hockey's not the going concern, where they've obviously had to construct the main arena from scratch, and they started that late, and they're kind of playing catch up. I can't remember if I mentioned if I'd spoken to. Did I tell you about the Turin Olympics on the last show? I can't remember if I had that conversation yet.
We briefly mentioned it, but it's okay to rehash it.
No, but I was just thinking. I ended up speaking to the person that was put in charge of those Olympics at the time, and he was pretty funny about it. But he said, like, I'll say that we got it done. It wasn't finished, but it was done. Like, he was mentioning there's even like construction dust in the arena that they were basically like just putting ads over. Like, they didn't even have time to even, basically it's like if you've ever done a half-assed cleaning job at your house because people are coming over. That it sounded like that's what they were doing before the Olympics in Torino. And honestly, it might end up being the same in Milan here. I mean, they're on a pretty compressed schedule. And it just might have to be what it might be. Like that Nathan McQuinning quote might be very applicable. Like it's not perfect, but I don't think any of us, I'll say this, any real hockey fan or big hockey fan, when it gets to February 11th and they're watching the start of that tournament, I don't think most people are going to care too much. I mean, most of us, let's face it, are going to be consuming the tournament through television from afar, right? Like we're not going to be in the arena. And I still think the players are going to put on a pretty good show there.
I'm just picturing the people putting together that arena in Milan. It's going to be like the equivalent of having a holiday party, and you've got stuff all over the living room. You just find a random room, you cram everything in that room, and just say, "Oh, don't go in that room. Just hang out in the main area."
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. As a parent to be here, I'm thinking this is going to be my new reality. In the next few months, bringing a kid into the house. I just think kids come with a lot of stuff, man. And I don't even know I don't even know what half of it does yet. Like I'm looking at these things and I'm like, very nice. Our friends have, sent us some stuff off the registry or whatever. But I'm like, I don't even know what this is used for. So yeah, I'm going to be that guy cramming things in the corner and in closets and all the like.
What's one thing either you've gotten or one thing about parenting that like you just can't get your mind to wrap around?
I'd say all of it. Like, quite honestly, I mean, and I'm sure any of our listeners out there that have had children or have kids can identify with this. Like, it's happening. Like you start getting close. There's been a lot of talk about it. You got to the point. I mean, look, we're talking about it on this podcast, but I've told all the people that need to know that we love in our lives and our work and everything. And then you're just kind of bracing for it, but you don't, and it's going to be hard and you're not going to sleep. But like, you don't know what it is, right? Like you don't, I think it's just one of those things you have to kind of jump off the dock and start swimming. And yeah, so the whole thing still feels a little surreal, even as it's getting more real and as we're getting closer to February when the babies do. But like, I don't have any idea what it's going to be like truly. I know it's going to be kind of crazy and, the 100%ers might notice a drop in my energy levels on a few shows or what have you. There might be some sleepless nights in there, but I mean, I don't even know what I don't know yet, my friends. So it's going to be a journey. You guys can go on it with me. Maybe we're going to have a parenting corner. It'll be a new session of this podcast. I don't know if that'll drive listeners away or if it'll make us more relatable. I'm not sure.
I hate to tell you, well, actually, not hate to tell you this, but there are questions in Ask CJ that pertain to parenting. So hold your fire on your thoughts on parenting real quick. Two more things before I get you to Ask CJ. Anything else you might be hearing around the league? Steven Stamkos, we've mentioned him on the show before, but anything new with him or teams that might be interested?
No, again, it's been reasonably quiet out there. I mean, certainly, I think New Jersey is a team that in general is being mentioned because, they're obviously dealing with the Jack Hughes injury. It's been tough for them to keep sledding through that. And so, they've been linked to both Stamkos and Marchand as potential options. But, let's keep in mind, those are players with no movement clauses. And I don't think it's advanced to a point where, it's relevant what they do there yet. I do think that there's going to be a push to move one or both of those players by the Predators this season. I think it makes sense, but they're not going to be easy contracts to trade, and they're not going to be easy trades to make. I suppose the best thing that could happen is Steven Stamkos has started scoring some goals lately, compared to when the talks first started, early in the season. The goals were a little slower to come for him. So, I think performance maybe could get the attention of some teams. And the truth is we all know the same things. We know that free agency is not going to be a good place to get players. I mean, Stamkos is signed beyond the season. If you think that maybe he's due for if he put in a different situation, he might be putting up numbers more like he's accustomed to. Maybe that'll make some sense. But no, it just seems like everyone's kind of sledding along. I know Nashville's trying to get out of it. Like they're not waving the white flag on their season yet, but they've dug a pretty big hole with the start they had.
And one last one for you. This is just more silly than anything else. Did you catch any of the Florida-Columbus game over the weekend, specifically in overtime, when Brad Marchand took a peek at some of the OT plans for the Columbus Blue Jackets? I thought that scrum was actually hilarious. Like, we talk about antics from players on this show. Brad Marchand's antics are funny to me. he's kind of like the league's Deadpool, and just that he just doesn't give a shit. But it's just funny to me compared to someone like Jordan Binnington. I know we discussed that player enough on the show, but I thought that was funny. I was just curious if you saw that and what were your thoughts on that.
Well, you buried the lead. That was also the 6-7 game on 6-7 weekend.
Yeah, something like that. Yes.
So a rare 7-6 hockey game in the NHL too on 6-7 weekend in December. So, yes, I caught some of that game. I also, a talking point coming out of that is we've had a few coaches in recent days not be happy with the way, challenges have gone. There was a goal in Tampa that was called back where the puck actually hit Brandon Hagel's glove, like basically was rimmed high around the boards. And, what John Cooper said after is that the player was protecting himself essentially from getting hit. It hits his glove. Teammate scoops it up, goes to Kucherov, and they tie the game in the final minute, except that comes back on review, which obviously Coop didn't like. And then there's a similar type of play in the Florida Columbus game, and the goal's allowed to stand, and Columbus challenged it, and the goal stayed on the board. And then you had Dean Evason afterwards, pretty forcefully making a point that he thought the game was a joke. Didn't elaborate on that too much, but I reading between the lines, I think he had seen what we're talking about happen in Tampa and thought it was the same play. So how could it be interpreted different? And on top of that, there was a goalie interference in a game between Colorado and the Islanders a couple days ago that Jared Bednar was left unhappy with the result on. He had challenged for goalie interference in Long Island, and the goal was allowed to stand, and he had some frustration. So who knows? Maybe those will be talking points too at the meetings I'm at here this week. I mean, this isn't a rule change type of meeting. It's more big league business, when you're at a Board of Governors meeting, but maybe some of those issues will be addressed as well.
I was wondering, just at that Board of Governors meeting, like anything on tap for the next couple of days that you might be hearing or you'll be looking out for.
Well, I'm curious to see how the Olympic issue gets addressed publicly. I mean, one thing is, you and I and many of our media colleagues have been talking about this story for the last week, but the league has yet to say anything formal about, how it feels things are going in Milan. And so I'm curious if, it's part of the agenda. So obviously the Board of Governors will be brought up to speed on it. But then at some point in time, perhaps Gary Bettman might address where things are at, how he feels about the rink dimensions, how he feels about the delayed construction, all those matters. We're always curious about expansion. If the league ever moved to expand, this is the meeting it would happen at, most likely. I don't get the sense that's in the air right now for the NHL. I don't think that we're going to get that announcement this week, but obviously there are cities and groups out there that are trying to attract the NHL's interests, that are trying to get arenas built, like in Atlanta, that are trying to get in the mix for when expansion returns to the league. So I think that'll be something we'll get some kind of update on. And there's usually a few surprises. The hardest thing, as I mentioned before, is they don't let us in the meetings. So you got to kind of sniff it out through conversations with everyone. But, it's kind of neat to be in Colorado Springs, a place I've never been before, at a hotel that's actually owned by Philip Anschutz, the LA Kings owner. So,
oh, wow.
100-plus-year-old hotel is pretty cool place called the Broadmoor. So anyway, we'll see what comes of it. The meetings haven't begun. It's early morning Monday here, and they start Monday afternoon.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. It must be 6 a.m. where you're at?
Yeah,
I'm doing us recording.
I'm doing the old Julian, when you used to have to get up early in Calgary. I'm in that time zone right now. So I got a dose of my own medicine.
A dog. I love Calgary. Great city. It's always going to be a part of my heart. I do not miss doing 6 a.m. records on this damn show. I don't miss it.
And let's face it, I just flew here yesterday, so my body's probably on Eastern time anyway. It wasn't that big a deal. The bigger thing I'm concerned about is I'm going to go for my first run here after we're done recording. And, altitude can be a challenge. I don't know how high up I am here. I'm in the mountains physically, but I'm guessing I'm going to be gasping for air after about 100 meters of that run when I get out there in an hour or so.
How many days are you at?
Oh, I've lost count. I mean, I haven't stopped. So I'm somewhere, I'm going to say ballpark around 2050, but I don't have the exact number.
That makes sense, right? So you're already well past CJ2K at this point? We're just counting down the days to CJ 3K.
Well, we'll see. I think CJ parenting is going to be, this will be the biggest threat to the streak, is if I can keep this going with a newborn around the house. But, I have no plans to abandon it, but literally it might be day 3 of the little guy being here, and I might be like, I can't do this. I haven't slept. I'm who knows? Who knows? I don't, again, I'm trying to keep, I just don't know what I don't know. It's the best way to put it. I don't know what I'm in for. I'm really excited about it. I know it's going to be crazy and challenging and exciting, and it's going to be everything all wrapped into one.
For sure. That's a February. We'll deal with that then. Let's get to some questions for Ask CJ. Shout out to everyone who sent them in for this week. Matthew wants to know, how did you become a Dallas Cowboys fan? Was it the logo, a certain player on the Cowboys? Really intrigued to hear CJ's Cowboys origin story.
Well, I'm old enough that this story doesn't resonate with today's youth, because you can watch any game anywhere at any time on TV pretty much, or through your device, what have you. But when I was a kid, I grew up, near the Toronto area. The Bills were always on Sundays, and the Cowboys were usually on in the late game. And so I kind of had two choices effectively, because every other team is almost just like a mystery team. You only see them when they're the visiting team to your team. There's no way to keep in mind, like, there was no easy way. I'm sure if you had like one of those big old crazy satellites, I don't know if you ever saw those or if you're too young. If you had one of those crazy satellite dishes, you could maybe get games from other markets. But I mean, I didn't have that. And I'm telling you, it would be uncommon for a family to have had that. Basically, if you were rich enough, you probably had that, but I wasn't in that case, like that camp. So my point is, I could really only see Cowboys and Bills games with any regularity. And for some reason, and the Bills were good then, I'm talking the 90s. For some reason, I didn't like the Bills, like not any logical reason, like I was young. And so I just always gravitated towards the Cowboys. And then, I think it was helped when I moved to Toronto. Some of my friends here were Cowboys fans, including Pierre LeBrun. And, especially when I was younger, we'd get together often and go watch those games at a bar or whatever on a Sunday. So that like kind of stoked it. And that was around the era when Tony Romo came along, and I always really loved Tony as a quarterback. And so that it went to another level, I'd say. Like I had the initial interest, and then, basically since around the early 2000s, I've been a diehard Cowboys fan, which, you'll note does not overlap with a lot of success for the team. I mean, they've only won a couple playoff games in the entire time I've been a real hardcore fan, and I've watched most of the games they played in that time frame. I try to structure my weeks around making sure I'm in front of somewhere where I can watch a game. So that's the story. Basically, it's when you're a kid, usually you just cheer for the local team. The Bills would have been the local team, and they were even good, but for some reason I just didn't like the Bills. If anything, now I got to say I have a soft spot for the Bills. Like if the Cowboys can't win, I would love to see the Bills win. I'd put it that way. I wouldn't go far to say I have a second favorite team, but I certainly, like, a lot of people care about that team. They've been a fun team. So like it didn't exist till now, but when I was a kid, I just couldn't get behind them. I don't know, maybe Jim Kelly or something wasn't my guide. There's no rational explanation basically, but I became a Cowboys fan because I could watch them on TV.
The thing about that story that sticks with me the most is your fandom of the team intensifying when Tony Romo was quarterback. Like that to me is like when I think of my early days enjoying football, like Tony Romo, not say he was like my favorite quarterback, but Dallas Cowboys games came on were around my ways too. And it was fun watching him play, but you always knew how those games were going to end in the fourth quarter because, well. No,
you always knew. I didn't know. I was hopeful that they were. Well, and to be fair to Romo, they had a bunch of like 10-6 seasons with him, or 11-5. Like
they did.
They were a good team. They just never got to be a great team, and they certainly didn't have any success in the playoffs. So, but they weren't like, they were a good team. Like objectively, honestly, I think the Cowboys of that era were more failed by not building a strong defense. Like I think a lot gets placed on Romo. I mean, I don't know if this is my own revisionist history because I really like the guy, but I feel like too much was asked of him. in a sense. I mean, he had the most 300-yard games in Cowboys history, passing games. I think actually Dak Prescott might have started passing some of those records now. But anyway, he was a really good quarterback, and he was, I don't know, there's something very likable about him. You know, they had a season, I'm not good at remembering the years because this is way back, but with him where I think they started 6-0 or 7-0 in a season. Now, it was yet another one that didn't end with a Super Bowl, so you were right. you always knew that they were going to fail when it mattered, but I believed in those teams. Honestly, I still believe in this team. They have a long shot path. They have a long shot path, but like I was obviously disheartened with the loss in Detroit on Thursday, but I still like the team. Like I'm hoping the Eagles are falling apart. That's what it looks like a little bit. They got the Monday Nighter tonight, so we'll see if they can lose that one against the Chargers. I mean, that would be huge for keeping the division alive for Dallas, but I don't know. I still believe in the Cowboys, even though you know how it's going to end.
I can't even complain because I cheer for the New York Jets, who officially are eliminated from playoff contention. They have not made the playoffs since I was in high school. So
Here's an Ask
really
Julian.
complain.
Who's an Ask Julian for you? Which franchise is in worse straits, the Sabres or the Jets? Not the Winnipeg Jets, the New York Jets.
Oh, God. Oh, man. God, they're both right there. I mean, the Jets are going to get some draft picks, but like that was the case a couple years ago. And
there's a lot of similarities, isn't there? Like it feels like there's similarities. Like they're on like their third rebuild, long playoff drought, the whole bit.
Yeah, I'll say the Jets. The Jets are just I don't know what you could do when your organization is poisoned from top down. And maybe Sabres fans might contend the same thing, but I mean, for right now, the Jets' playoff drought is longer than the Sabres. Yeah,
and I'm certainly not here to defend the Sabres ownership group, but the Sabres ownership group owns the Bills, and they've had a lot of success since owning that team. So, like, you know, ownership 100% plays a part in it, but I don't know if it's all the ownership, if that makes sense. There's something else beyond that.
I think so, too. Something else must be afoot. Anyway, I'm going to protect my peace and move on to another question. Congo Red wants to know, have either of us changed a diaper? Did Steve or Adam change one before they had their own child? I can't answer for Steve or Adam, but I've never changed a diaper.
I have changed one diaper in my life. So,
oh, my God.
In a babysitting a young family member situation. But I will say that I'm about to exponentially have that number grow. I'm going to go from changing one diaper in 40 plus years to changing every diaper for the next 2 or 3 years, however long it takes.
Oh my God! When we hear about the adventures in parenting in the group chat, that's going to be a day. That's going to be insane.
I got to say, the diaper thing, actually, I'm not as worried about. It's some of the bigger issues. Like, I feel like that's just one of those things you just do it. I mean, it's your kid. I mean, like, I don't think I'm not saying it will always be convenient. Don't get me wrong. Or, because especially like if you're in public or something, there's going to be some moments, I'm sure. But like in general, that doesn't have me as worried as, you know, the sleep schedule. Like, I don't like just balancing everything, if that makes sense. Worried is the wrong word. I'm just saying, like, all this stuff runs through your mind, but when you're doing it for the first time, but you don't have the answers. Like, you don't ever arrive at a plan because you don't have a plan.
I don't mind you saying worried. You clearly look. You're about to be a parent. You care very much about the well-being of your soon-to-be child, and you want to make sure that you are the best possible parent for that child when they come into this world. I think worried is more than fine to use. It just shows that you care.
There you go. Okay. And I'm worried about my partner too. I want her, you know, obviously love her deeply and want her to come through everything okay and want to make sure that I'm helping her, you know, recover from all this too. Like it's a lot. I mean, I'll tell you, you take for granted a lot of things when you've never been through it. Like, cause you just learn more when it's like happening in your own house, basically, or like when it's your own life than when it's a friend or a family member. Obviously, you get to my age, I've seen a lot of other people have kids, but doing it yourself is already a trip, and I haven't even got to the exciting part yet.
Roderick wants to know if you've already gotten parenting advice from Adam and Steve.
Steve gave me one piece of advice, which I won't share because I don't know if he would want me to. Adam has not, that I recall. But, you know, a lot of friends have. I haven't found it too bad. Like a lot of people say, here's one thing I'll tell you. Like, I don't want to overload you. He's like, a lot of people, someone who isn't Adam and Steve gave me an example, like that he said that helped him. He's a dad. And he said, like, when it's hard some days and you're like, feel overwhelmed or you feel like you're screwing it up. He's like, you got to remember literally everybody on earth has like gotten through this. Like essentially, like you're not special. Anyone walking among us was raised by someone, you know what I mean? Like it's, and I think that grounding yourself that way could be helpful. But yeah, Steve had some sleep related advice. Steve is always like, make sure you get your sleep. I'm like, I can't bank it right now. I mean, I do try to get my sleep. Don't get me wrong, but I'm like, unfortunately, I can't save it and like have it like a video game where I have like a sleep, 1-up or something for, when I'm tired on February 28th or what have you.
Yeah. Sleep doesn't roll over, like not from one year to the next or anything like that. Like
exactly.
Once you don't sleep, you don't sleep.
The good news is now I don't travel a lot. I feel like the years when I slept the less was usually tied to, busy work hours. Like we work nights because we cover NHL games and they played at night mostly. And then like getting up early to fly places like that's, so I'm not doing a whole lot of that these days. So I do actually feel pretty well rested, but we'll see what February I'm going to be singing a different tune. You know it.
Oof, don't worry. We'll as best as we can help you, we will find a way to do so on the CJ show with that.
How are you and the producer going to feel when I'm like, let's just record at 4 a.m. That times with my sleep schedule with the kid or the feeding schedule.
I mean, if that's what it takes,
I'm kidding.
I'll set the alarms from now. I'll set the alarms on my phone from now.
You hated the 6 a.m. Calgary one, so I was thinking, like, how could it get even worse for you?
Hey, here's the thing. Getting up early, a little bit tough, but it's a good thing this podcast isn't actually work. It's actually fun to do.
Yeah, no, it's been about 20 minutes since we talked about hockey, so it's all been parenting and nonsense.
That is true. But that's the beauty of this show. That's going to do it for our Monday edition. We'll be back later this week with a brand new episode of the CJ Show. And hey, maybe you'll get more parenting advice between now and when this episode comes out later this week.
I'll tell you this, the Instagram algorithm is on to me because I'm getting tons of like served up Instagram content that way. It's too much. Like, I'm like, you can't, like, I'm sure it's great advice, but you can't like internalize all this. Like, some of it you just got to go do. You know what I mean?
Man, I can't wait. Siege, great work as always. And we will talk to you all later this week, dear listener or viewer. Thank you so much for watching and or listening.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.